Insufficient sleep is a global public health epidemic. Now, in the area of success and wellness, imagine it kind of like a stool with three legs. There is the one leg which is dedicated to nutrition and proper diets and a proper lifestyle. The second leg is dedicated to fitness and movement, yoga, meditation, all that stuff. And the third leg that a lot of people tend to overlook when it comes to living a life of success and living a life of health and all the good things that come with a life of longevity is the leg of sleep. A lot of people seem to overlook that, and that is what this entire episode is dedicated to. This is an episode that I've been waiting to record since launching this podcast over a year ago, because sleep is one of the most important, crucial elements of your life, and it is a question that I get asked all the time about sleep and why is it important, should I be getting enough sleep, and how should I be getting enough sleep. So we're going to talk all those things in this episode, and I encourage you to listen to this and watch this as many times as you need and take notes. And if you're listening to the podcast version, please be sure to head over to YouTube and watch the video version as well, and subscribe while you're on there, and vice versa as well. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode and let's get started. Hello दोस्त, hello friend, how are you? क्या हाल आपका? की हालत वाड़ा? Welcome to episode 45 of the Desi podcast. I'm so excited to have you back on our weekly dates. Now, a really important caveat before we dive into today's episode. If you take anything away from what I'm about to teach you, it's the following. If you have not had proper sleep over the last several years of your life or ever in your lifetime, please know that all is not over, because throughout this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some tips and tricks that you can start implementing literally today into your life. And as you listen to this episode, you'll really take a keen sense of why sleep is important and why it might be impacting you in areas of your life that you may not even know. A lot of people say things like this. I hear this all the time. People say, "Oh, Arslan, I'll sleep when I'm dead," or "Sleep is for the weak," or "I'm in hustle and grind mode. Sleep is not important to me." And those things are just ridiculous. And every time I hear stuff like that, I just shake my head, because people don't understand that when you say things like, "I will sleep when I'm dead," you are going to die at a very early age. I know that sounds really bleak and morbid, but there's research behind it, okay? Sleep is linked to, a lack of sleep deprivation is linked to so many things in people's lives, including like early death and illnesses and diabetes. And I'm going to actually read a couple statistics throughout this episode, and a lot of these will be linked on the show notes of the Obesity website. So be sure to go reference those and save those for future use if you really need them. But I've done a lot of research around this subject matter, and I want you to really take this to heart, because it's really important. Okay, so let's jump into one of the first stats that I was reading through. According to Dr. Malcolm von Schantz of the University of Surrey, he says chronic sleep deprivation has been reported to be associated with greater mortality via a large number of negative health outcomes, including obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Okay, so let's talk about obesity for a second. A lot of people complain about this all the time. They say, "Arslan, I am eating right and I'm getting the exercise that I need, but I'm still not able to lose weight or keep the weight off." Now, there's other variables as well. You should definitely get a full checkup with your doctor, because there's a lot of underlying issues that a lot of people deal with when it comes to not being able to lose weight, including some thyroid issues. But what I would highly recommend is take a look at your sleep. Are you getting enough sleep, and are you getting the right quality of sleep? Like that quote, that stat that I just read, cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, and some of the other things not listed there is heart disease. Heart disease is on the rise because people are not getting enough sleep. Other things are stroke. You're at a higher risk of having a stroke if you're not getting enough sleep or the right quality of sleep. I mean, let's really take this into consideration with your own life. Think back to the time that when you did not get enough sleep, or if you went several days without getting the right amount of sleep, if you slept for 3 or 4 hours, or were not really taking care of your sleep patterns, okay? Go back and think about those days. How did you feel? More than likely, you probably had a very foggy brain. You weren't able to really think and concentrate. You weren't able to focus, and you maybe had some mood imbalances. It's just your body telling you that you need sleep. Okay, a lot of people complain of symptoms of mood issues throughout the day. If you're not getting enough sleep, you may be a little bit more agitated. You may have a difficult time focusing. You may have a difficult time holding on to conversations with your best friends, with your family members, with your significant other. Okay, so really think about the importance of sleep when it comes to just your social life. You cannot think properly, you cannot focus, you cannot articulate thoughts, you cannot go out into society and act like a normal human being if you're not getting the right amount of sleep. So sleep really takes a toll in multiple areas of your life. All right, so let's take a look at another stat that I was researching. Now, this one comes from the American Sleep Association. Now, even though this is based out of the US, this really takes a toll on people around the world. So whether you're listening from India, Pakistan, or Australia, these statistics are really keen to really impact you as well. This is a global epidemic, like I said in the beginning of this episode. So everything that I say is going to relate to you as well. So this says that 50 to 70 million US adults have a sleep disorder. Okay? Drowsy driving is responsible for 1,550 fatalities and 40,000 non-fatal injuries annually in the United States. Okay? So this is really important as well. So anyone that you know in your life, if they tell you that they're not getting enough sleep or they don't really care about sleep, really take a look at the implication of that in their life and how much risk they're putting other people into as well. You know, especially if you're in an industry or a field, let's say you're a doctor, or let's say maybe you work in a factory environment. If you're not getting enough sleep, you are not only putting yourself at risk, but you are putting other people's lives at risk as well. All right, getting into a car, driving on the interstate, on the highway, wherever you're going, if you are sleep deprived, you may slowly start dozing off. You may start falling asleep, and then you're risking other people's lives. That is so scary to even think about. And so why does that happen? Why do people start dozing off when they do not have enough sleep? Again, it's your brain and your mind and your body trying to tell you that you need rest. Now, let's go back and take a look at why sleep is important to human beings. You would really think that sleep would be, when human beings, like when we first, around the caveman time, when, there was the hunter-gatherers, when there were saber-toothed lions, you would think that sleep would maybe be a flaw in our genetics or in our DNA, because when you sleep, you are actually out cold and you are more susceptible to predators showing up and, literally killing you. So you would think that why would sleep benefit us? We should be able to be awake and not sleep enough. But here's the thing. Here's something to really take into consideration. The reason human beings are still around today, the reason we've been able to evolve to where we are today is because of sleep. Sleep is what has allowed us to get to this point in our lifetime, for the reason that human beings have been around for so long, is sleep is actually something that benefits us. It's not the thing that we should be taking for granted. All right. So the reason we start kind of dozing off is because our mind and body are telling us that we need the rest. There have been people that go days without sleeping and then they literally just collapse. They just collapse on the ground and they just fall asleep. That is how important sleep is to you every single day. It is such an important aspect of your life. All right, a couple more stats before we jump into some causes of what why sleep deprivation might be a part of your life, and some fixes and solutions that I can provide by the end of this episode. So here's one that comes in from All One Health, and they say that sleep-related workplace accidents and errors cost organizations $31 billion each year. A 2008 poll by the National Sleep Foundation estimated that almost 1 in 3 U.S. employees report that daytime sleepiness interferes with their work at least a few times per week. $31 billion each year due to sleep-related accidents. Okay, and this one is, this following stat is actually from a global study, and it comes from Dreams Co. And the study is titled that this data shows a shocking worldwide lack of sleep. And they write, in 1942, 8 hours of sleep was the norm. Now, 6.8 hours is the average. According to this data, not one country out of the 48 that participated managed an average of 8 hours of sleep a night. And it went on to say that folks in Japan are getting about 5 hours of sleep on average. In Saudi Arabia, 6 hours. In Sweden, 6 hours. India and Pakistan, about 6 hours as well. And the Philippines, 6 hours and 22 minutes. Now again, sleep is a very individualized thing. Some people can really function off 6 hours and some people need 8 hours. But anything below 6 hours can prove to be deadly. Deadly in so many different ways. Deadly in regards to your lifespan, shortening the longevity of your life. Diabetes, again, is on the rise, and even weight gain is really associated with the lack of sleep. Anything below 5 hours every single night, what ends up happening is if you are sleep deprived, what's going to happen throughout the day is your hunger hormones, ghrelin is the hunger hormone. It sounds really funny. I know it sounds kind of like gremlin when the first time I heard it. I had a good chuckle, but ghrelin is your hunger hormone. And what ghrelin does is throughout the day, ghrelin either goes up or down based on your body and your gut and your liver, corresponding the message to your brain if you are starving or if you are hungry. And if you don't get enough sleep throughout the day, ghrelin is at an all-time high. So you're more likely to consume a lot of unnecessary calories, empty calories, snacks, and all these things that you really don't need what you really need is proper sleep and hydration. So people start consuming more calories, unnecessary calories, and they're not getting enough movement or the proper kind of movement if they are sleep deprived. Okay, so sleep is really important, but again, it varies from person to person of how much sleep do you need. So what does a lack of sleep do? I've talked about this a little bit, but let's touch base on a couple things that a lack of sleep is doing to you. One of the things is irritability, and generally a more negative mood is exhibited if you're not getting enough sleep. Irritability is a big one. A lot of people that say that they're usually happy-go-lucky, they're in a good mood, if they go a few days without getting the proper amount of sleep or the proper quality of sleep, they will start exhibiting irritability towards their loved ones. And it's very noticeable too. And from personal experience, I can go ahead and admit this because I'm very open to sharing my vulnerabilities with you, is I can 100% attest to this. On the days that I'm not getting enough sleep or poor quality sleep, I tend to be a little bit more irritable, have a little bit more mood swings. And so what I need throughout the day is at least 1 or 2 really good naps. And once I get those, I'm back to being a good Arsalan. So just take this from me personally, because I take pride in making sure I get enough sleep. But when I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder, I was having many, many nights where I was waking up constantly from panic attacks and anxiety attacks and just like a racing heart due to a lot of chemical imbalances in my body. And so due to that, the following days, the following weeks, I was just miserable. Just constantly, mood swings were happening. I was very irritable. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think. I've shared a lot of the symptoms of anxiety on my episode dedicated to my personal anxiety story. But take that for granted. Like really think about that as well. If you have mood instability throughout the day, really take into account how much sleep you're getting. Another side effect of lack of sleep is unhappiness and depression. And this is a very, very common one, but people seem to overlook this. People that tend to have depression, especially undiagnosed depression, they may not be getting enough sleep because, again, your mood is all over the place and there's a lot of negative chemical imbalances going on in your brain due to the lack of sleep. A lack of energy is another one. Problems with memory and retaining information. This is a huge one if you are a student or an entrepreneur. Okay, if you are having a hard time studying and focusing on your tests or in class, it may be related to sleep-related problems, okay? So if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're staying up and on your devices, which we'll get to that here in a little bit, you may have a hard time focusing and paying attention in class, or even being able to focus on your studies or papers that you need to do. As we said, weight gain is associated as well with lack of sleep, okay? So now let's jump into why is it so hard in today's time to get sleep? Why is it that in 1948 and before that people were getting plenty of sleep, but now they're not? There's a lot of obvious reasons to this, and let's talk about the obvious ones first that I've referred to previously in other episodes as well. The first one being, no surprise here, your devices. Your devices are one of the biggest culprits to you not getting enough sleep. Now, something that a lot of people don't know, this is something that I discovered a couple of years ago, but it's becoming more of a common knowledge nowadays, but your devices, your cell phone, the screen from a computer, TV, and even sometimes the lights in your house or your dorm room, they emit what's called a blue light. A blue light, what it does in your brain, let's talk about the chemical first that causes you to be able to fall asleep. Melatonin is the name of the chemical that helps you fall asleep. And melatonin is a naturally occurring chemical slash hormone that is being released in your body throughout the day. But we are conditioned as human beings, as the sun drops, there's an increase in melatonin in our brain. But what blue light does, the blue light that emits from your devices, or a computer screen or a TV screen, is it really reduces the melatonin in your brain. So what ends up happening is you're automatically having a more difficult time falling asleep because you're on your devices. That blue light that's being emitted is a big culprit, one of the biggest culprits probably for people, especially today in this time, because we're all on our devices all the time. So in a little bit, I'm going to talk about some solutions to this and what you can do, but that's one of the biggest culprits right off the bat is the blue light from the devices that you're using. The second culprit to why you have a hard time sleeping is a rise in caffeine and stimulants. Now, I'll be the first one to say, because this is no surprise, I love chai. Chai is a part of my life, it's a staple, but I also know that if I have chai a little bit later in the evening, I can be sure that I'm gonna have a harder time falling asleep. But caffeine that comes from coffee or other drinks such as sodas or other beverages that have stimulants in them, they're really, really a big culprit for people who are trying to fall asleep. Now, by the way, caffeine, this is another really fun fact that I learned a couple of years ago. Caffeine has what's called a half-life. And what that means is if you consume caffeine, let's say at 6 p.m., by about midnight, about 6 hours later, there's still about 50% of caffeine still in your system. So every 6 hours after you consume caffeine, there's still half of it. And then from midnight to 6 a.m., there's about 1/4 of caffeine still in your system. So that half-life really takes a toll within 12 hours after you consume caffeine. So stimulants and caffeine are a big culprit for why you may not be getting enough sleep. Work and stress is the next one. This is a very obvious one. If you have something happening in your life right now due to some maybe medical issues, or maybe something going on with your family or loved ones, or some money issues or job issues, anything, pretty much anything related to stress or worry is going to be a culprit again for you not getting enough sleep. And these are things that we'll talk about in a little bit on how you can really tackle them, okay? The fourth one is a lack of sunlight and nutrients throughout the day. Sunlight is a very important ingredient, let's just say, in the development of melatonin. As I was saying, melatonin is what helps you fall asleep, but if you're not getting enough sunlight throughout the day, and it's even as simple as just stepping outside and going for a walk, or even opening up your windows and letting the sun come in. Sunlight is really important, and getting proper nutrients is really important throughout the day to be able to fall asleep at night. And remember, your nightly routine and to be able to have a good night's rest, it starts the minute you wake up. There's things you can do throughout the morning and throughout the day to help you fall asleep, okay? A couple more. So the fifth one that may be a culprit to you not getting enough sleep is a lack of hydration. I've talked about hydration so many times, and I will continue to talk about it because people are not drinking enough water. Water is super important for you to get proper oxygen flow going through your system, through your gut, through your stomach, to your brain, and to be able to really move that blood around to help you fall asleep at night. And then the last one is late night eating. There's nothing wrong with being able to indulge yourself a little bit later in the evening, but it depends on what it is you're eating. If you are really going carb heavy and having like literally a full-on meal about 30 minutes before you want to fall asleep, it's going to be a little bit tricky because your body has now gotten these nutrients inside that it needs to digest, and it needs the time to be able to get it through its system. So be very cautious of what you're consuming about 30 minutes before you fall asleep. If it's some snacks and whatnot, it's no big deal, but if it's a full-on meal, really pay attention. And I'm looking and talking to my Desi folks out there because my family does this all the time. My family does this constantly. I'll go over to the house and they'll be getting ready for bed, and before they fall asleep, they're making chai and literally full-on snack attacks. And everyone is, having pizza and all these ridiculous things, and they're trying to fall asleep, and they'll tell me the next day that they didn't get a good night's rest. There's a reason for that. So be very cautious of what it is you're consuming before you fall asleep, all right? So those are some culprits to why you're not getting enough sleep. But now let's jump into the most important aspect of this whole episode, something that I highly encourage you to have a notebook ready to take notes, because I'm going to jump into some tips and tricks and hacks that you can incorporate today to start getting good sleep. All right, let's jump into it. Now, this is what's called as an evening routine. This is something that you can incorporate into your life today. And as I said a little bit ago, remember that a good night's sleep starts the morning, the second you wake up. You can start doing things throughout the day to help you fall asleep at night. And be very cautious of the things that you're doing throughout the day if you want to really turn your sleeping patterns and sleeping habits around. And again, the whole idea behind the Abundant Desi, just a reminder, is as I empower you and educate and inspire you, I also want to see you thrive. I want to see you flourish. I want to see you succeed. And the last one is I want you to live a long, healthy, incredible life. The whole concept behind the Abundant Desi is I want you to succeed and live a life of abundance, right? And for you to live a really long, healthy life so you can take care of your family, your loved ones, your community, organizations you believe in, and people around the world, you need to live a long, healthy life. And for that to happen, you need to take care of your sleep, because I want you to live a very long life. And that is going to be very hard if you're not sleeping properly. Okay, so really take that into account. This is all for you because I want you to succeed. I want you to take care of yourself. So let's talk about what happens when you're falling asleep, by the way, because this is going to be really important when you talk about the evening routine. So when you're falling asleep, there's 3 different brain waves that are happening throughout your mind as you're kind of drifting into sleep. So the first wave that's happening is called the alpha brainwave. And the alpha brainwave is what you're experiencing right now as you're listening to this episode or watching it. It's what's going on 80% of the day when you're up and moving, you're in a classroom, you're at work, you're driving, you're hanging out with your family, you're in an alpha brain state. You're awake and you're conscious, and that's what's happening. So as you kind of slip into what's known as the theta brainwave, that's kind of like the meditative state. If you've ever been meditating or done yoga, you kind of start experiencing this calmness, this relief, this sense of just peace. That is theta, and that is what's happening when you're slowly drifting into a sleep-like state. Okay, you may have experiences when you're really slipping into sleep. You start you almost start slipping into a dream-like state, and it's like this really fine line between being awake and drifting into sleep, and you start kind of like feeling this sense of peace. That is known as theta. And then once you finally are in the sleep state, when you're full on sleeping, that's known as delta. And delta brain waves is a slow wave where all the benefits of sleep really come in. This is when things such as muscle restoration happen. So for those of you who are watching or listening that are into fitness and movement and are really getting into taking care of your body, now remember, when you're doing weightlifting, for example, what you're really doing is you're having these really, really micro tears in your muscles. When you're doing bicep curls or when you're doing deadlifts or squats, you're having these micro tears in your muscles. And for you to gain muscle and for you to be able to build up muscle, this is really important. Sleep is a very important variable. For people who don't get enough sleep, you're not going to be putting on muscle. Actually, you're going to be putting on fat and weight on your body, because your body really needs that time to heal and restore. So those micro tears tend to kind of restore themselves and expand, and in conclusion, you get the muscles that you want over an extended period of time. This is happening is known as muscle restoration, and this is happening in the delta brainwave. Other things that are happening in delta brainwave when you're full on sleeping and at rest and at peace is growth hormones are being released. So a lot of, especially teenagers that have a growth, difficulty with growth spurts, or even again going back to the muscle development, the growth hormone chemical is not being released enough or properly throughout the night if you're not getting sleep. And then other things that are happening during the delta brainwave when you are sleeping and at peace and at rest is brain detoxification. This is so important. Okay, this is really important. This is one of the biggest things that I really want to talk to you about right now is the brain detoxification. Throughout the day, when you are just awake and moving and doing things throughout the day, what your brain is essentially doing is it's collecting data throughout the day. Every conversation you have, every experience that you are living through, every moment that you are living and breathing throughout the day that as you're awake, at the end of the night when you fall asleep, your brain goes to work. It immediately goes to work, and what it's doing, it is taking all that data, think of it like a computer, and it's putting it into different parts of your brain where they need to go. Things that go into short-term memory, things that go into long-term memory, and really taking things that you don't really need and dumping them in a place that isn't required. So useless information, useless things that don't really benefit you throughout the day. Again, you have 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. Some of those thoughts are not important. Some of those are extremely important, especially the new ones that you have that you need to be able to put in your brain for long-term memory. This is when that happens. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to lose a lot of those memories. You're going to lose a lot of those experiences, and you're not going to be able to let your brain do the thing it needs to do. So that's really important, okay? So really take that into consideration. And lastly, the really cool thing about the brain as well and what it's doing when you're trying to fall asleep. And the credit here goes to my man, Sean Stevenson. And I'm going to link his book in the show notes. It's probably like the fourth time I've linked his book, but please go get Sean Stevenson's book, Sleep Smarter. It is the #1 book I recommend all the time. And also listen to his podcast, The Model Health Show. Now, he is the master of sleep. He is known for his talks on sleep and why sleep is important. And he's the one who really turned me on to the idea of sleep and making me realize the importance of it. Something he shared on his episode that totally blew my mind is what's happening with your brain is as the sun goes down outside, our brains naturally are getting ready to fall asleep. So sometime between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m., going back to the caveman times, going back to the hunter-gatherer times, when there was no electronics around, when there was no street lamps around, when there was no lights around, when the moon came out and the sun had dropped, we naturally fell asleep, all right? And this happened somewhere around 10 and 11 at night. So with today's society and where we live today and what's going on in today's world with devices and all these things, we tend to push that time back, and people are staying up till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if you are if you listen to my previous episode when I talked about, lions, bears, wolves, and dolphins, night owls, early birds, and all that stuff, go listen to that episode. There's nothing wrong if you are a quote-unquote night owl or a wolf who likes to stay up and sleep later in the day because you're getting things done at night. But for those of you that don't benefit from that, what you're doing with your brain is actually really toxic. If you stay up on your, Netflix or your devices on your phone, what's going to end up happening is your brain is waiting for you to fall asleep. And automatically at about 11 o'clock at night, that is when your brain goes into this state of detoxification that I just mentioned. And it goes to work and it starts storing things where they need to go. But if you're awake and you get this second wind of energy, or second wave of energy rather, because you're, on your devices, the brain is still waiting for you to fall asleep. Now, let's say you fall asleep at 3 in the morning and then you wake up at 6. You have not given your brain ample time to be able to put the things where it needs to go. And so the next day, not only are you going to feel groggy, but you are really destroying the function of your brain that really needs to do that. So over time, it could be really destructive rather to your long-term memory, to be able to really put things into long-term memory form. So people that have early stages of dementia and Alzheimer's, sometimes, not always now, sometimes it can be related to sleep-related illnesses or disorders, or just not taking care of sleep, okay? So again, I want you to live a long, healthy life, so please understand that, that sleep is really, really important. So now that I've kind of run through some of those things, let's talk about some actionable steps things that you can do throughout the day, okay? So let's start with the first one, blocking blue light. We talked about blue light a little bit ago. Now again, blue light, what it's doing is restricting the development of melatonin in your brain. And melatonin, again, is a sleep chemical. Now, cortisol, on the other hand, cortisol is the chemical in your brain that goes off to help you be aware and alert, sometimes associated with anxiety. And when you wake up in the morning, there is an increase in cortisol because, again, going back to the hunter-gatherer times, when you wake up, you're immediately alert because you're looking for predators. And so what happens with blue devices, the light that comes off from devices, the blue light, is there's a decrease in melatonin and an increase in cortisol. And that's, again, messing with your mind because when you have an increase in cortisol, you're alert, you're awake, and you're focused. Again, you get that second wave of energy. So something that Sean Stevenson, again, recommends, and I've heard a lot of people recommend, is what's known as blue light blocking glasses. These are glasses you can get on Amazon for very, very cheap, on eBay, pretty much anywhere. And they're just glasses that you put on about 2 hours before you fall asleep as the sun starts dropping. And if you are on your devices, what these glasses do is they omit the blue light and just cancels it out. And a lot of the new phones, because iPhones and Androids and Apple have really picked up on this, a lot of your new mobile devices that you are actually listening to this episode on, they have in it already installed a blue light diminisher or blue light filter. And sometimes it automatically kicks on, but there's different apps. One of my favorite apps on your mobile device or even on the computer if you like to work at night is this app known as Lux, Lux. Free app, 100% free to use, but what it does is it just eliminates that blue light and it doesn't reduce the development of melatonin in your mind. So please really take a look at what different things you can do to eliminate blue light, but starting with blue light filters if you don't want to go the route of wearing glasses at night. But this is something you should be doing about 2 hours before you fall asleep, okay? All these things that I'm about to share. 2 hours before you fall asleep, start implementing these things into your evening routine. The second thing you can do is have a warm bath or shower. Now, why is this important, okay? A warm bath or shower, what it does is it will activate the parasympathetic nervous system. For those of you who struggle with anxiety or depression, the parasympathetic nervous system is what is not being activated. There's an issue with the activation of that part of your nervous system. And what that part of your nervous system is doing is essentially helping you be in a little bit more of a calm and peaceful state. And a warm bath or shower will help activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and it'll eventually calm you down, and it'll calm your body down, and it is a very vital part of the natural state that helps you fall asleep. Okay? The third one is having a warm drink 2 hours before you fall asleep, and by warm drink I mean either green tea or warm milk to calm your nerves. No chai. If you have a hard time falling asleep, no caffeine, no black tea, black tea is fine. No black coffee, anything that has caffeine in it. Try to eliminate that 2 to 3 hours before you fall asleep. Again, caffeine and stimulants are a huge culprit for those who are trying to fall asleep and they can't. And then the last thing you can implement into your evening routine is meditation or prayer or visualization, okay? All those things really fall into one category. Meditating or having a prayer of some sort or visualizing, what it does is it allows you to shut down and shut off all of your senses. What it does is it'll take your brain to peace, to calm, to serenity. And most, if not all, successful people say that meditation is a non-negotiable to them. It is a must for your daily lifestyle. Okay, those are 4 things you can start doing immediately to help you get into a state of sleep. And again, it's things you can do throughout the day. Make sure you're getting enough sunlight. Make sure you're getting enough water. Make sure you're taking a toll of what kind of nutrients you're having throughout the day. Make sure you're not eating huge amounts of food before you fall asleep. Make sure you're getting rid of the blue light that is being emitted from your devices, your cell phone, your computer, your TV, and sometimes even the lights inside your house. Make sure you're not having caffeine 2 hours before you fall asleep. Make sure that when you go to sleep in your bed, make sure that the temperature is a little bit cooler. Okay, if it's too hot in your bedroom and if you're way too hot naturally, you're gonna have a hard time falling asleep. So make sure your body is cooled down. Make sure you've meditated or prayed or have some kind of visualization strategy happening. Take a bath if you need to, drink some warm tea. There's a lot of things you can do to fall asleep, okay? But again, what I want you to do is start implementing a proper sleep schedule and sleep cycle into your life, because I want you to be around for a very, very, very long time. And not just me, your family, your loved ones, your friends. Everyone wants you to live a long, healthy life. It's really important, my dost, my amazing friend. I encourage you to take a listen to the episode as many times as you need, and please get a hold of me. After you're done listening to this, get a hold of me. Let me know what you think, and as you're listening to this, be sure to post something on your Instagram stories, tag me on it, share with me what you're going to do to start sleeping better every single day moving forward. Okay? And again, if this is your first episode ever, thank you for listening and welcome to the Abundant Desi family. Subscribe to the podcast and on YouTube, and give me a hella dose on Instagram. And until then, we will be seeing you very soon on the next episode of the Abundant Desi podcast. And I want you to go out there. I want you to be abundant. I want you to be amazing. I want you to go get some sleep. I love you, dost, and we will see you very soon. Thank you, dost.